Hey folks, and welcome to the latest video in the Rhapsody Power Pack series. I'm Andy Lapping, and in this video I'll show you the first in a series of helpers designed to help you perform trade studies in Rhapsody. This week, the Parametric Constraint editor. In SysML, a parametric constraint is how you capture and solve performance, reliability or sizing equations in the model. Now we can use them for any kind of mathematical reasoning, not just trade studies. We can define these equations using constraint blocks or constraint properties. Blocks are great for defining an equation once and then reusing it, but Rhapsody also allows the use of implicit constraint properties, which don't need a corresponding block. In either case, the process for creating them is roughly the same. Create the constraint block or property, add the constraints with specifications, and then create parameters for the variables in those constraints. Now, those are typically created on parametric diagrams like this one. First, I'll do it without the Power Pack. I'll start by creating a new constraint property. Then I need to add the constraint. So we'll use the right-click menu to do that, add new constraint. I'll define the equation here in the specification field using the parametric constraint expression language. Let's define the area of a circle using A equals pi r squared. Now I can show that equation on the diagram by switching the box into specification mode. I'll also add a second constraint, which forms a rule. Now that constraints are visible on the diagram, I can type that specification directly. So A must be greater than, let's say, 30. Now I need parameters. Now a useful tip here is to load the parametric constraint evaluation profile into the model, which has a useful helper to create them. So File, Add Profile to Model, PCE. Once that profile is loaded, I should now have a new menu option on that constraint property, Create Parameters from Constraint. So that's all great. It doesn't type the parameters though, which is fine for the parametric constraint evaluator itself, which does allow type plus parameters. But if I did want those typed, I'd have to open the features view for each one in turn. Also, if I wanted to rename a parameter, that can be tricky. I'd either have to rename it manually in the parameter and all of its constraints, or I could try a search and replace, but that isn't too effective when we're searching for single characters like A. So let's use the Power Pack Constraint editor to do the same thing. That editor, by the way, works either with constraint blocks or with constraint properties. I'll add another constraint property, and I'll set it to specification mode straight away so that we can see any constraints on the diagram as they get created. Next, I'll use the menu Power Pack Edit Constraint Property to open the Power Pack editor. Let's add a constraint using the Add Constraint button. Now I can rename that directly in its Name tab. Next, I'll update the specification, and I'll do that by typing directly into the editor. So A equals, and at this point, I'll press Control Space to open autocomplete. Parameters and known constants in the language are at the top, followed by known functions in the language. Now I can also use Control F to see only the functions, and I can use Control P to see only the parameters and constants. Now, of course, there are no parameters yet, so we only see the constants. I'll select pi. Then I can carry on typing, so multiplied by r to the power of 2. Now note that the editor modifies the constraint in the model immediately as you type. And it also applies syntax highlighting. The colours used and also the font size may be controlled by properties, which we can see over here in the features window. To create the parameters, I'll click the Extract Parameters button. Now, if I wanted to change the types of those parameters, I can do all of that here in the editor. And I can choose the default type and the available types, again using properties. I can locate any of these parameters easily using these locate buttons. Let's add another constraint for our rule. This time I'll press Ctrl P to bring up a list of existing parameters and language variables, and there at the top are our parameters. So let's use that to set the same rule, a greater than 30. If I want to rename a parameter, I can do that directly here in its name field. When I click Enter on the keyboard, that automatically changes the name in all of its constraints. And of course, I can use the same editor to edit any existing constraints as well, whether they were created with the PowerPack or not. One last thing, if I open the PowerPack help and then navigate down to that constraint editor, that section of the help contains a detailed guide to that parametric constraint expression language. Well, that's it for this video. Over the course of the series, we'll explore the rest of the Rhapsody PowerPack features that will greatly improve your Rhapsody user experience. So please do subscribe if you want to be notified as those videos get published. But for now, thanks for watching.